Hello everyone. Do I have a video for you today? So I have been on the internet lately, perusing, looking, checking stuff out, and I keep getting specific types of videos popping up on my feed, whether it's on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is. I keep getting videos from random Joe Schmoes, doctors, experts, right, who are warning the public about the dangers of candles. And so I've been getting these videos for a while now. I think the first one I got was all the way back in maybe like last summer of 2022. And so my friends even started sending me some and was like, what's up with this? So today we're going to talk about it. Hello everyone, my name is Brianna. I have a small business named Moonwax Galaxies where I sell 100% soy wax melts and candles that I make myself. I added that last bit in because sometimes I think people think that I don't make it myself when I go to events. I make all of these candles and wax melts and stuff myself. That being said, I kind of already said the intro of what I'm doing here, but let me just sort of explain to you the concept of the videos that I keep looking at. Basically, the concept is essentially something of like, oh, wax melts are dangerous because of the soot that comes off of the candles, right? Which is one thing in and of itself. Another thing is that burning candles is toxic to breathe in the candle, right? And I've seen many different theories and quotes going around of like, oh, don't burn scented candles at all, or only burn a certain type of wax. Don't only burn beeswax, only burn soy wax. Different types of tips and tricks and flows that you have to do. I always see people talking about it. I didn't see anyone actually talking about the science behind it, right? So I went back to actually do some of my own research, and granted, it's only like through like Google research, so take what I tell you with a grain of salt, and I'm going to share with you what I found because I have my own thoughts and opinions. So we're going to like switch up the layout here. I'm going to switch it so I can show you the studies that I looked up on my computer, and also do like a face cam moment situation type of deal. Okay, cool. Hello everyone. So we're going to kind of do some research on the whole thing about, are candles dangerous? And so I looked up several different articles, both the articles, and we'll also get into the actual research studies, because what I found is that literally every article I was coming across was quoting the exact same sort of, the same couple of studies. There's one in 2009, which is the biggest one that I've found. There's a 2021 one that I've also found, and then there's also like a 2000. Some of these studies, I will admit, have been deleted, which we'll get into, but let's just kind of talk about some stuff, right? So again, let me review. The argument here is that when you have a candle here, when you burn the candle, there are two main concerns. A, the candle releases toxins when you burn it that are dangerous to breathe, and B, the soot that can sometimes occur. I don't think you can see it. There's soot up there. The soot that can occur when you burn a candle that can also be toxic to breathe, right? The main argument is that candles are toxic to breathe in. There's also other videos that talk about way too much soot and how you get soot on your walls and your ceiling and stuff like that. We will probably talk about that in this video, but I might go more in depth in another video. Depends. So the first article that I have found today is by Healthline, which says, is burning candles safe or bad for your health, right? And I'm not going to read the entire article. I will link all of the articles and studies down below so you can read them yourself, but I mostly just went through and like highlighted the important bits. So here we go. Are candles toxic? And are candle wicks made of lead? Candle wicks in the United States don't currently contain lead. In 2003, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission voted to ban the sale and manufacture of candles with lead wicks. They also banned the import of lead-containing candles from other countries. So For those of you who may not be aware, wicks are essentially the thing you light in your candles. So you have wooden wicks, cotton wicks, and many other types of wicks. There used to be wicks back in the day. A lot of candle companies made wicks with lead in it. I believe, don't quote me on it, but I believe it used to be like a thin lead rod in the middle to sort of keep the wick straight. There are people who are obsessed with a straight wick for obvious reasons, and B, the wick being in the center. The reason why you want your wick to be straight is because if it's curved, it may heat up one side of a glass jar too much, and it's going to cause it to crack or even worse, explode. So they use that sort of lead rod to keep the wick as straight as possible. The problem with that is you're burning lead in your house, which was proven to be dangerous to inhale. I don't even think it would be possible to find a candle with any lead in it because it's been banned, at least here in the United States. So there are no candles made of lead. They've been banned in 2003. Now, is wax made of toxic chemicals? So the most popular wax, and there's tons of different waxes, but the most popular waxes to date would be paraffin, soy, and beeswax. There's also coconut and like blends, so like coconut soy, coconut whatever, beeswax, where you take different waxes and mix them together. This is sort of going into the argument that I have seen of people being like, oh, well, this type of wax is better than this other type of wax. So as you can see, I pretty much highlighted this whole paragraph in red, but most modern candles are made from paraffin wax. So candles that are from big businesses like, I don't know, Bath and Body Works, Yankee Candles, most of them are made from paraffin wax. Not all of them, but most of them. And the reason why people sort of are against paraffin wax is because it is made from petroleum as a byproduct of making gasoline. So that pretty much just means that is basically petroleum is the same ingredient that you use to make gas, aka the gas for your car, as you see, a byproduct of making gasoline. So a 2009 study found that paraffin wax releases potentially dangerous chemicals such as toluene. And it's toluene and formaldehyde. I hope I said it right. Formaldehyde, which are these toxic chemicals that have shown to have some links to things, to serious medical diseases such as like cancer and stuff like that. Right? And this is what everyone is freaking out about when they say, oh, are candles toxic to breathe in? Blah, 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 right? This 2009 study, which again I will talk more about, but essentially the 2009 study has shown that yes, while these candles do release these sort of toxins, it's not enough to really be a danger to human health, right? Because everything is about like how much is it before it's toxic to you. That's toxicology, right? So this is a whole thing. But according to a statement released by the European Candle Association, they have provided no data for the review, and they're talking about this 2009 study. They provided no data for review, and their conclusions are based on unsupported claims. No reputable scientific study has ever shown that candle wax, including paraffin, to be harmful to human health, right? And the study has never been published in a peer-reviewed journal, right? And this 2009 study is quoted in a lot of different articles, but also videos where people are talking about the dangers of candles. And they talk about this study, but they don't really tell you the study. They don't really tell you anything about the study or like what they found in the study. Most of them, not all of them, most of them are referring to this 2009 study from what I have researched. And again, this is mostly through like Google and stuff like that. So again, take this with a grain of salt. But there was a 2007 study funded by the Candle Association where they examined every major type of wax for 300 different toxic chemicals. And the researchers found that the level of chemicals released by each type of candle was well below the amount that would cause human health problems. So there is a certain amount, and listen, science is not my best subject, so bear with me, y'all. But like, when it comes to toxicology, there is a certain level of toxins that is suitable for for the human body to inhale in any way, shape, or form. And then you have that certain, like, if they go over this amount, then it becomes dangerous, right, to inhale. So a lot of these studies are saying that no, candles aren't going to essentially release anything that's above that sort of line of health safety concerns, if that makes sense. I hope it does. So going through more of this article, the Healthline one is really my favorite because it goes through everything, but it also says, do candles release particulate matter and volatile organic compounds? So burning candles does release volatile and organic compounds and particulate matter into the air. So particulate matter is a mixture of extremely small liquid droplets and particles that can enter your lungs. There's a concern that extended exposure to particulate matter can lead to heart and lung problems, right? And you can read more about volatile organic compounds. They're basically carbon compounds that easily turn into a gas at room temperature, right? And then some of them occur in flowers to produce a sweet aroma. And then other VOCs like formaldehyde, which is one of the ones that I had mentioned earlier, formaldehyde and benzene are potentially cancer causing. But a 2014 study examining the amount of particulate matter released from burning candles found that the amount released isn't going to cause health problems in humans. Again, this is sort of below the line of safety concern that's in toxicology, right? Is candle smoke toxic? For the most part, every article, and we'll go through more articles that I have lined up here, every article that I've looked at said it's good to minimize the amount of smoke you breathe in by lighting your candles in a well-ventilated room and keeping them away from drafts that can increase the amount of toxic smoke that they release, right? So the idea is that usually every candle that you have, I'm going to use an example, has a warning label at the bottom. You can't really read it, but every warning label is essentially supposed to have the same sort of things where it's like, you know, keep it on a heat-resistant surface, make sure there's a draft, keep the wick trimmed. You're supposed to burn it only for about 3 to 4 hours at a time, right? Don't leave it near like children and pets. Don't leave it unattended. That type of stuff. They'll usually say along those things when it comes to a warning label. The thing is that a lot of people don't read the warning labels, but what candle makers will scream to the high heavens is that you must absolutely, without a doubt, you have to trim your wicks. And people don't. And it's really, hold on. It's really, 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 God, it's so important for you to trim your wicks. If you get nothing else out of this video, please trim your wicks. One, because it's a fire safety hazard. Two, because we'll talk more about it when it comes to like the soot and stuff like that. But, you know, three, it also lets your candle last longer. So you'll see tons of candle enthusiasts and candle makers all over TikTok, all over YouTube, saying that you please, please, please trim your wicks. Yes. But so this kind of talks a little bit about the soot. And, you know, reduce the amount of smoke that you're breathing in. Keep it in a well-ventilated room. Keep them away from drafts that can increase the amount of smoke. Trim the wick, stuff like that. Scrolling down, are scented candles toxic? So I also have heard this one, that you should burn scented candles versus non-scented candles, or you shouldn't burn scented candles versus non-scented candles. So burning scented candles have the formaldehyde component, which again we said is linked to cancer, but even though these scented candles release these compounds, this article says it isn't clear if they impact your health. I have found one study that pretty much says that even though, yes, scented candles do release more toxins than an unscented candle, their scented candles are still below the sort of safety line of like toxins you can breathe in. So they are completely safe. But I also feel like, you know, scented candles have more more going on in terms of its like chemical profile than an unscented candle for obvious reasons. So it's like, yeah, of course they're going to release more toxins, but it's really still safe to breathe, essentially. Are soy candles toxic? So this kind of gets into a little bit of the different types of waxes, which soy candles produce less soot and toxic chemicals than candles made from paraffin. Even though the smoke is cleaner, it's still a good idea to minimize your intake of any type of smoke. The European Candle Association offers the following advice for handling candles. Again, don't burn it in a drafty area. Trim the wick. Instead of blowing out a candle, and this is another big one, when you blow out a candle, you'll usually blow it out and then you see all that smoke that comes up. This is what usually like candle snuffers are for, which mine is downstairs. So I'll try to insert a picture of what a candle snuffer looks like. But you essentially take it and you hold it over the flame to like snuff it out. Or you have the little, I don't know what it's called, but the little pincer where you take the candle wick and then you dip it in the wax to put it out and then you kind of raise it back up again. If you don't have these tools, one thing I always recommend is just take your jar, put the lid over it. And sure, you'll get some soot that usually may show up at the top of your lid. But that you can easily just wipe it off. But again, I just recommend that if you're like, I don't have a candle snuffer or anything like that, put it out with the top of the lid. If it comes with a lid. I know sometimes some candles don't come with a lid. And then which candles are best for your health? Burning almost anything has the potential to release chemicals that may cause harm to your health. And then the smoke from burning candles in a well-ventilated area is unlikely to have a significant impact on your health compared to the pollution you breathe in during your daily life. Sticking to candles made from natural resources is your best option. Some natural candle options include coconut wax, beeswax, soy wax, palm wax, vegetable wax. You know, I'm going to show you a study, but essentially like all of the waxes essentially emit the same amount of toxins that we talked about earlier. And there's really no difference. It's really just like how much you care about the environment when it comes to how these waxes are made, which we'll talk a little bit about the differences between at least soy wax and paraffin wax. But in terms of like for your own health when you breathe it in and for your lungs, there's no difference really. It's just a matter of like breathing in how it affects the environment. Yeah. Another article, this one is from EcoWatch.com. Are scented candles actually bad for you? It's a little bit of a longer read, but I just highlighted again the important parts. I'm going to link this down in the comment section below, in the description below, so you can go through and read all these articles yourself. But essentially, again, the 2009 study, which I have and we're going to go over, showed that, again, the toluene is released. And it is true that some scented candles do contain cancer-causing chemicals like benzene and formaldehyde. While very high concentrations of these chemicals might indeed be harmful, recent research has found that amount of particles and vapors emitted from burning household candles is lower than the limits recommended by the World Health Organization. In fact, a 2014 study that analyzed the air quality of rooms of various sizes after burning candles for 4 hours found that the highest measured levels of these chemicals were only half of the recommended limits set by WHO, aka World Health Organization. Yes, toxicity will increase if multiple candles are lit in poorly ventilated areas for prolonged periods of time, but normal use is not generally a cause for concern. So again, the main concern here is that candles itself is not toxic whatsoever, but the most important thing is trimming the wick and also making sure that you are in a well-ventilated room. Respiratory toxicologist Nikita Sudekar, I'm so sorry if I butchered her name. She is also quoted in a lot of different articles that I've read. I'm only showing you like a small handful of the hundreds that I went through. But she is also quoted in a lot of these articles. And she basically says that exposure to chemical emitted by scented candles is so low that they pose no significant risk to human health. Ultimately, this exposure is trivial compared to the cocktail of toxic chemicals in the air on a busy metropolitan street. And we'll get into that in a second. But scented candles tend to burn with more soot because the compounds added for scent change the carbon to hydrogen ratio in the candle, which affects the way that it burns, said Mary Brummett, NF. According to the National Candle Association, the amount of soot produced by burning candles is low and similar to that compared by kitchen toasters and cooking oils, and not that of coal or gasoline. So again, the amount of soot or, you know, smoke is the same amount that you would get by, you know, burning something in your toaster, or cooking oils that you would cook on the stove, versus something that's more toxic and a bigger concern like coal or gas, which, you know, is actively harming the environment, stuff like that, yada, yada, yada. All that in a bag of chips. Okay. So, to prevent additional emissions and minimize soot, look for 100% cotton wicks, right? Or better yet, 100% organic cotton wicks, which also minimize pesticide use and other harmful farming practices. So the rest of this article basically just goes into a lot of stuff about the environment and climate change, which I think is a worthy mention for now. I will probably try to do my best to like do some research on like how candles and like all the different parts of a candle can affect the environment and all that good jazz. But if you are specifically concerned about soot, we would like to minimize the staining on nearby walls, keep candles away from drafts, ensure that the melted wax is clear of debris, and keep the wick trimmed between 15 millimeters. Paraffin wax, a byproduct of gas and oil refineries, which are major drivers of climate change right now, is a common ingredient in candles, but soy candles have become popular lower impact alternative, which I myself make soy candles, but it's also important to realize that, and the article talks about it here, soybeans aren't barrels of fracked gas, but the crop is still notorious for deforestation, GMOs, and heavy use of pesticides. Beeswax is a favorable option for candles too. The wax of honeycombs is harvested along with the honey made in beehives. The wax is, however, considered an animal byproduct, so many vegans won't purchase products coming from beeswax. I also know that, from what I hear through the grapevine, that beeswax lasts a lot longer than both paraffin and soy wax. So these are all things to keep in mind, right? And the rest is pretty much just talking about other sources of waste, like the containers with the glass jars, and how to recycle and reuse them, stuff like that. Try, you know, reduce, reuse, recycle, trying to care for the environment. I also had another article, but New York Times is like, you've already reached your limit of free articles, so now we want you to pay us. So I'm just going to link it down below for you to read, which is weird because I'm pretty sure this is the only article that I read from them. And like, I'm trying to read the same article that I read yesterday, and they're like, no, girl. So unfortunately, I can't show it to you, but if you feel like it, you should definitely look at it for your own information. And then there's this other one, which is, I feel like this one is a little bit more of like a daytime magazine type of situation, you know, like a whatever. This one is called Good Housekeeping, but it's also worth mentioning. So again, let's get straight to it. Are burning candles toxic to your health? A variety of studies have studied burning candles in an indoor setting that mimics normal households use have mostly found that the amount of soot, VOCs, and particulate matter, is a particulate or particular? I think it's particulate matter produced are well below the threshold of concern, regardless of the type of candle burned. That being said, some types of candles may increase the amount of worrisome chemicals and particles in the indoor space, especially paraffin wax-based candles and fragrance candles. However, levels are likely not likely of major concern, right? And I know these articles keep saying that, like, oh, well, it's really just the amount of chemicals, right? So I don't think, maybe most people are aware of it, but just so you know, in candle making, this is sort of like a 10-ounce candle, right? And this one that I have, 16 ounce. So as you can tell, these are bigger. Usually it's a rule of thumb, the bigger the jar is for the bigger the room. So a candle that's this big is more so for like your living room, like a very wide, big open space, so it can fill the room more, versus like this candle is for a smaller room, like your bedroom or something like that, right? And even then, it still depends on the size of the room. For example, Not to crap on New York, but you know, New York apartments tend to be smaller than other places. So again, you have to make sure you are getting the appropriate size of candle for the right room that you are in, because the last thing you want to do is have like this type of candle burning in like your bathroom, and then you come in and you're like, why is there black soot all over the wall? That's why. So just keeping these things in mind. Okay, are the potential health risks of what are the potential health risks of burning candles? I think this is a typo. I didn't even notice. So according to Dr. Croft, research shows that inhaling PM over long periods of time is linked to asthma attacks, exacerbations. I have a lisp. I'm so sorry. Of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, increased risk of cardiac events, as well as stroke and other neurological conditions. Sometimes you can see visible smoke or soot coming off the candle, so certainly there's some degree of particulate matter that is released into the air. And I'm going to talk more about this. Sometimes you can actually see the smoke or soot coming off of the candle, but in my opinion, this has more to do with, again, in my opinion, has more to do with whether or not you're trimming the wick. If the wick is too thick or too large, it's going to release off more soot. And it could also just be the fact that the wick may be too big for the candle that you have. But regardless, you should still be trimming down your wick. And that will also help alleviate some of the soot that's coming off of the candle. But if the wick is still too big for the candle, it's still going to emit a lot of soot. I think the big question in literature is, well, is it enough? Is there too much particulate matter? Is it enough to harm someone? I think the most important thing for consumers and people that are using candles to know is that in toxicology, the dose makes the poison. So again, how much of it is toxic enough for a human being? One thing I will say is that I haven't really looked into animals. So pets, if you have like a pet, cat, dog, bird, I don't know. I don't know, whatever kind of pet you have at home. I might have to do separate research on like how would this be toxic to maybe like a smaller animal. That's also a good question to research. So maybe I'll do that at some point when I have some extra time. I've been a little busy lately, sorry. But so far, no studies have solidified the danger threshold and determined exactly how many candles in a room of a certain size without ventilation will cause harm. Until that happens, Dr. Croft says people must assess their environment and try to get a feel for what candle adds to the environment and at what point it might be overpowering. Again, make sure you match up the right size of candle to the right size of your room. There's no specific study, like they just said, that may show what's too much for what size room. But again, I would recommend this sort of 10-ounce size jar for a bedroom sort of size, and then this is more so for a larger room like your living room. You know, so, you know, use your own discernment, be safe, be careful. But like, there's really nothing dangerous going on from what I found. What about paraffin wax? Even though technically I think the paraffin candle in that example had some of the higher particulate emissions, they all had similar or relatively similar range. And again, this is a 2021 study that they're referring to, where they studied literally every type of wax. I have that study pulled up where you are going to get to that study. But again, they all had the same amount of range. So if people are trying to tell you, oh, soy wax over paraffin wax or beeswax over any other type of wax, it's not that big of a deal. It's nothing that's gonna like drastically change your health. However, he says early research has suggested that paraffin candles may pose more risks, so it's reasonable if you choose to avoid them, even if the final answer is unknown. Scented candles. Again, from that perspective, there is no concern of any risk of harm from their exposures by burning candles. Scented candles specifically, under normal conditions of use of scented candles, do not pose known health risks to the consumer, the study authors concluded, right? And then it talks about how to safely burn candles. Invest in an air purifier. That's if you want to put in the money for an air purifier. I know sometimes they can get pretty expensive. Opt for unscented candles. Trim the wick before you light. Make sure the room is ventilated. These, honestly, 3 and 4 are the most important ones that you should pay attention to. Make sure the room is ventilated well enough. And then make sure you also trim the wick before you light. Avoid breathing in the air above the candles. So make sure you don't necessarily like have your face right here while the candle is lit. I know it's tempting. Try not to do that because you're like literally getting all of that smoke right into your nose. Set a timer. Do not burn your candle for extended periods of time, more than a few hours. Usually it's recommended no longer than 4 hours at a time. I know people who are like, they light their candle and they keep it on all day until there's no more wax left. It's not recommended. Please be careful. Also, don't blow the candles out. Extinguish the candle with a snuff or by dipping the wick into the wax to reduce exposure to soot and smoke. Again, you can buy these things. Again, I recommend if your candle comes with a top and you're trying to put it out, just put the top over it and that'll solve the problem. Consider fire safety. Always keep burning candles in view and extinguish before going to bed and leaving the space where it is burning. And also go flameless. So I sell wax melts myself. A lot of people will buy wax melts. You can get an electric wax warmer that you plug in. So wax warmers, when you have wax melts, here's some wax in there. When you have wax melts, they usually come in sort of like a small version where you can break off little squares of it. You put the wax at the top, and then down here is where you would get like a little tea light. You can light it and it'll warm up the bottom of this. And so you'll still get the effect of a candle without necessarily having a candle. This is a sort of traditional version. I got this at the Dollar Tree. Traditional version where you actually have the tea light. So you still have a candle burning, but they do have electric versions of these where it's instead of a candle, it's like a light bulb. You plug it in and then you put little wax melts at the top. This is sort of a more eco-friendly way to still have something scented going through your house without necessarily having like a flame. So that is also a good option. Wax melts also tend to be a cheaper option than buying a full-blown candle, mostly because it's like wax melts are smaller, it's less wax. So, you know, it's up to you. I've been buying wax melts a little bit more often than candles, and it's also been a good time. So to each their own. All right, so now for the actual studies. This is what I could find for the 2009 study. It was a little hard to find, and I feel like it's still kind of vague. And this is the American Chemical Society. And I felt it kind of weird because when I was looking at it, I was like, it's only like 3 paragraphs. And so I don't know if the original study is just gone and I only have this left, because I was trying to find it. I really was. But this is all I could find. And I was like, this is really what everyone freaking out about. So let's read through it. This was in Washington in, again, 2009. So it's basically just says that like burning candles made from specifically paraffin wax has an unrecognized source of exposure to air pollution, including human carcinogens. So basically just saying that, hey, we discovered that burning candles does release these dangerous toxins that could pose a health risk. There are studies later on that shows, yes, even though it does release toxins, it's not enough to be a danger to people's health. And then the study was also said, again, I don't actually have the sort of results or anything like that for this, but they were saying that candles made from beeswax or soy, although they're more expensive, are apparently healthier. They do not release potential harmful amounts of indoor air pollutants while retaining all the warmth, ambience, and fragrance of paraffin candles, which are made from petroleum. An occasional paraffin candle and its emissions will not likely affect you, but lighting many paraffin candles every day for years or lighting them frequently in an unventilated bathroom around a tub, for example, may cause problems. Besides the more serious health risks, he also suggests that Some people who believe they have an indoor allergy or respiratory irritation may in fact actually be reacting to air pollutants from burning candles. So this is a 2009 study that everybody's quoting. Now, I have a couple more studies I want to show to you. This one is a 2013 study, and it's kind of long, so I'm just gonna really go into the abstract here all the way at the end where it talks about the conclusion. But it basically says, on the basis of this investigation, it was concluded that under normal conditions of use, scented candles do not pose known health risks to the consumer, right? And then also at the bottom, it talks about the conclusion, but I think what's also interesting is to pay attention to the conflict of interest. Financial support for this work has been provided by a consortium of companies organized by the Research Institute for Fragrance Materials Incorporated. So it is probably worth keeping in mind that this sort of study did receive some financial support for the Research Institute for Fragrance Materials, which they, develop fragrance oils and stuff like that. So that could be a point of conflict of interest. And then this study, which was January of 2021, which was literally, I'm pretty sure, right before the pandemic really hit, right? Because it was like the end of January when we were like, hey, everybody stay inside. So, but essentially some things to highlight. This is a study where they studied pretty much every type of wax they could find. And I'm going to talk more about it when I show you the charts. It's really, really long, but I think this is the one that I could find the most information about. So I'm also going to link it below. I'm going to link everything, but I'm going to link this one below. But some of the highlights here, the one that I highlighted said, in most scenarios, the calculated concentrations of toxins, again, the toxins we talked about before, were significantly below established safe levels. So if it's below the established safe levels, it's fine to breathe in. If it's above, it's kind of toxic for humans, specifically humans. Again, I don't know what the different levels are for pets. So, but like scrolling down, you see the abstract, the introduction, and then the methods, and then it goes, here's some pictures of them testing the candles, and then they talk about the wicks that they used, which is a lot. You see some, I saw some math in here. I was like, oh god. But I'm just gonna quickly show you here. So here is what you can see in the chart, and the findings. Again, all these numbers may be a lot to take in, but I'm just going to point out here they show you the sort of wax that they use. So palm, paraffin, soy, and stearin. I hope I pronounced it right. And then it shows you the fragrance. So for each type of wax, they tested floral, fresh, fruit, oriental, spice, and edibles, and then no fragrance. I really don't know what they mean by oriental, but anyways, So they obviously did extensive research on this, which is why I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. So yeah, this is the study where they looked into every different type of wax. So scrolling down some more, because this will take me all day to get into. I'm going to kind of skip towards the conclusion part. But again, if you want to read this, I'm going to link it below. Have fun, go crazy. During the safety assessment of the emissions, it was determined that for the vast majority of the measured parameters for which toxicologically justified indoor air guide values are valuable, the corresponding short-term and long-term concentrations for indoor air are safely met, and in many cases are well below the established safety levels. Again, safe to I don't want to say consume, ingest, breathe in for humans. No individual wax was shown to have a consistently better emission profile than others. So a lot of, at least in this study, if there's another study that proves this wrong, please let me know. But for the most part, it's saying that like every wax seemed to be on the same level, and there was no particular sort of wax that was less toxic than the others or more toxic than the others. So there's that. And then last thing, fundamentally, it can be stated that candles without fragrance additives produce lower emissions of combustion byproducts than candles with fragrance. This can be attributed to the fact that many fragrance constituents exhibit a considerably more complex combustion chemistry than fuels, which again, this one was talking about candles with fragrance versus without fragrance. And again, it is true that candles with fragrance sort of emit more toxins than without fragrance, but again, it's not really anything that's going to be toxic enough to humans that's bad for humans. Ooh, that's bad for humans. But also it's probably because, again, they have more going on chemically than just regular candles, because there's nothing in there besides wax, versus like a scented candle, you have all the fragrance oil plus the wax mixing together. It's a lot more going on. So yeah, that was like all of the research I spent probably way too much time looking into. And again, you can like download, you can also download this as a PDF. You can view it as a PDF for this one. Comment down below your thoughts. Let me know if there's any other research that's like, actually, you're wrong, you know, because I really tried. I was really trying. I was looking, I was searching. I even like visited my library for a bit. I didn't really find anything that was like that crazy. So yeah. If you liked this video, please like it, please subscribe, please share with your friends. Thank you for watching this video. May your stars always align, and may fate always conspire in your favor. I will see you guys in the next video.